Hi everyone, it's Jessica. Today I have this really cute picture of my son from a few years ago that I want to put on a one-page scrapbooking layout. When I went through my Pinterest board, I was really inspired by this amazing layout that was from the Cocoa Vanilla design team member, Mandy Melville, and so I'm just using that as my inspiration. Now I have here a bag of what I consider all of my boy stuff. So I have this 6x6 paper pad from Echo Park that is called Play All Day Boy, and I loved that because the colors went well with my son's shirt. And then I also have a few other little pieces, some chipboard pieces, some ephemera. Some even are from different collections. Like I think I've got some photo play ephemera in there, but color-wise, they all work pretty well together. I even have a scrap left over from a 12x12 paper from the same collection by Echo Park. So I'm going to start by trimming my 4x6 photo down. There was just a lot of dead space in the photo, and so I wanted to trim it in tight to my son. So I end up making this 3.5x5, and then later you will see that I do double mat it on both some white and black cardstock. So it ends up being just a smidge bigger than 3.5x5. Then I had a lot of fun going through the 6x6 paper pad and just pulling out a variety of patterns. So I started with this one first because it has lots of different trucks and things on it, and it's very colorful. And then I used that as inspiration to look for some pieces that were a little bit more solid in nature. So like I've got that orange one, even the blue pattern paper, even though it has little planes on it, it is still mostly a solid blue. So I like to do that when I'm putting my pattern papers together, is just kind of start with one that's a little bit busier and then pair it with some other papers that are a little bit more subtle in their design. I also thought this would be the perfect opportunity to use up that last little scrap that I had of the 12x12 paper that is in the black and white pattern. So I'm going to cut all of these down off camera. Honestly, there's no rhyme or reason to the way that I do it. I just take them and I start cutting them into strips. Some are like 2 inches, some are 1 inch, some are 1.5. I mean, they're all just kind of a variety of widths, but what I will do is cut 2 of each, and so that way I can make them span all the way across the 12x12 page. So I don't have anything glued down yet. I just wanted to kind of put those together and then test them out with a couple of those ephemera pieces that I had pulled from that same collection. I was going to cut a title on my Cricut with some black cardstock, and then I remembered that I had this acrylic piece in my closet from Color Cast Studio, and it says currently, and I think it looks really cute right there. It fits perfectly, and I'm going to use that to build my title. So I'm going to add it with this little ephemera piece that says Where the Wild Things Play. And then my journaling will just kind of talk about, my son at this age, this was right before his 3rd birthday, and the kinds of things he liked to play and what he did. And so I thought that title worked out really well. Now, just to hide that one seam, I am going to add this little red pennant bag banner right there. And so that way you'll never be able to tell that blue piece of pattern paper is actually 2 strips of paper, and then the photo will hide all of the other seams. So using that 6x6 pad was just perfect, even though this is a 12x12 layout. So I've gone ahead and inked all of the edges, and then I also took my cardstock over to my sewing machine and I just added a little bit of a wonky stitch all the way around the perimeter of it, and I'll go ahead and start gluing all of these down. Now, in order to make it a little easier to work with those strips of paper, what I did is I just matched them up and put a little bit of Scotch tape behind them just to hold them together. And then that way I can glue them down as one piece, a little bit easier than having them as 2 separate pieces. Again, not a whole lot of rhyme or reason here. I just start gluing these strips of paper down. I start with that black and white pattern, and then from there I just move up, leaving a 1/4 inch gap between each of the different layers. And you'll notice that I put some farther over to the right, some are over farther to the left, and I just kind of stagger them, side to side all the way up my paper. And I think that adds a lot of whimsy and just a really fun touch to this layout. Now, I really love the original sketch or layout that Mandy did that I found on Pinterest, and hers had a lot of gorgeous embellishments on it. But honestly, I felt like this was coming together so quickly, and I didn't really need to do a whole lot of embellishing to it, just because the papers themselves are so bright and colorful, and they offer so much for the eye to look at that I don't end up doing a ton of embellishing here. So I've got my title. I have that little red flag, and then I'm going to pull in here in a second a couple of other little pieces just to kind of finish it off. Now, normally I would probably put my acrylic pieces down with some glue dots, but I realized that I was actually all out, so I had to add that to my shopping list. So I used a little bit of liquid glue instead. And then before I put the photo down, here's where I decided to add just one more hidden photo behind it. And I'm going to put my journaling back there too. Because when I took this picture of him, I had one other picture from that same moment. And it was this goofy picture of my daughter. You can't even really see my son in it. Her eyes are closed. She looks kind of silly. And at first I wasn't going to include it on the layout because I liked the look of having just the single photo. But sometimes I feel picture guilt. I don't know if anyone ever else feels this way, where it's like no picture left behind, and I have a really hard time throwing them away or not including all of the things. But I didn't really like the look of it on the front of the layout. So what I'm doing is just creating a little pocket here with some really thin foam tape. That way I have a little well back there, and I can just put that picture back there along with some journaling, and it'll still be included, but I won't see it on the front of the layout. So here's where that'll just kind of slide in. I realized at this point that I should have planned ahead, because when I tried to slide it in, it was getting hung up on that orange strip of pattern paper. So if I were to do this again, I would kind of cover that spot where it's going to slide in with a solid piece of cardstock, so that way it wasn't going to get hung up on anything. It ends up being easy enough to get in and out. You just kind of have to bend the page a little bit, but that is a little tip if you decide to do this as well. So in order to give it something to sit on, I just cut down some white cardstock, and then I put this fun little torn notebook edge on the top of it. That way you'll see that part peeking out from the top of his picture, and it'll give the viewer of the scrapbook something to grab a hold of. And then I'm going to put her photo on one side and the journaling on the other side. So here's where I'm using some of those chipboard pieces that I had that go along with this collection. And I'm just, like I said, adding a couple of them because really I feel like the papers kind of do a lot of the work for me, and I really love that. And so I've got a couple of little circles here with some stars on them, and they go along with all of the colors that I have going on. And then I had a couple of different options for down here, some car related things, because he does have a Cars shirt on, and that was one of his favorite things to play at that age. It was like everything was, wheels, cars, trains, anything that moved. I end up not using the dump truck or the sports car, but just that little racetrack and the little phrase there. And then I remembered at this point, before I glued those down, I was like, oh shoot, I forgot I was going to splatter some black ink all over some of this white space here. It seems like every time I go to do this, it's like an afterthought, and I really should have planned ahead, and I just kind of forgot about it. So I'm just going to cover up my photo to protect it. And then this is some really old, I don't even know what it is, just kind of like a spray, a stain in a black color, and I'm just going to tap it across the top left and the bottom right of my layout, just to add a little bit more interest and also to fill in some of that white space at the top of the page. So that dries pretty quickly. And here I've got my journaling piece, my photo tucked in. I did stamp a couple little dots across the top of that, and I've got everything glued down. So I felt like it needed just a little something more. I was kind of struggling not embellishing it that much. I was like, just maybe a little something more. So naturally I'm going to do just a little bit of stitching. So I'm going to poke some holes here in order to make a quick little zigzag stitch on 3 different spots Again, kind of staggering them on those strips of paper. So that brings in a fun little punch of red to go along with the red of that banner flag. And then I brought in just a little bit more red in the form of some enamel dots. So I'll go ahead and kind of scatter those around my 3 different clusters. And that's going to be just about it. So this layout came together very quickly. Like I said, mine is not quite as elaborate or embellished as the original one from Mandy Melville, but hers is beautiful. And I loved being able to just do a quick little scrap lift of it and get one more photo or one more layout into the scrapbook and not leave any pictures behind. That was another good thing about this one. So I'll just kind of tuck that back in, add my journaling later, and it is all done. So thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you guys have felt inspired, and thank you for watching. I will see you guys next time. Happy crafting. Bye.